Welcome everyone, and thanks for clicking on this video. If you're thinking of buying Force of Nature 2, then I'd highly recommend you stay tuned for the next 13 minutes and I'll give you an overview of what this game is like and is it worth spending your money on. The first part, I'll quickly go over the basics. Then in the second part, I'll talk about the good and the bad of the gameplay. And lastly, I'll give you my opinion, for what it is worth, is what is the game actually like to play. And yes, this is a 40-hour gameplay review, and there is the proof. Though I guess of course I could have edited that and put it in, but you'll have to trust me on that one. And please consider hulking out on the sub button, which is in the bottom corner of the screen or at the end, and hit that like button. My respect if you do.
Respect.
Of course, that is Sacha Baron Cohen as LEG, and I watched a video of his when he interviewed David Beckham and Posh Spice. Good God, the audacity of the guy is epic. Just watch this.
Now, it must be amazing going out with the Spice Girl, but in an ideal world, and no disrespect to your bitch, wouldn't...
Moving on with the review. Force of Nature is going to cost you about US $15. In New Zealand that is $20, and it is described as this on Steam, that it offers incredible adventures full of mystery, danger, exploration and magic. This game combines the genres of survival, sandbox, action, adventure, RPG, strategy and resource management. And yes, you would have picked up the giggle in my voice here, because good God, that is making a very bold call on what it offers. The basics. Now, unlike the very bold Steam description, I would describe Force of Nature 2 like this. It is a single player game where you are tasked to explore and unlock progressively more difficult maps. It has a very simple story as to why you need to do all this. And you will spend a lot of time unlocking new items to build and craft, and to be honest, that aspect of the game is really multi-layered with a huge array of unlocks. You can do some basic character customization, and as you kill monsters and creatures, you're going to gain some XP, which will progress you through character levels. And each new level you can either learn a new skill or enhance a previously learned one. In the game you can craft tools, weapons, clothing, armor, all sorts of things. And as you progress further into the maps, you're going to find new materials which are required to unlock new discoveries, and therefore in turn unlock new items you can make, and therefore unlock progression to the next levels, so forth and so on. That is what the game is like. Let's talk about the good things about the game. It is pretty darn cheap. It is cheap, that's a good thing. The graphics are clean and sharp. The game looks really good. There is a massive array of unlocks, crafting and building options. It really is huge. You can tame animals and then you feed them to get their produce, which you will need for certain materials and food items. I like that dynamic. You can plant seed beds and grow a pretty decent array of crops, which is required to craft certain materials and goods. The ghost helpers that you unlock as you progress through the maps are a good addition and a very much required addition. The maps are not overly complicated, they're easy to navigate. The creatures and animals you fight, they look good, and there is a nice variety of them. The special abilities that you gain through extra levels experience can be pretty damn useful to escape and defeat enemies. You will need some of those skills at times. It has very few bugs, and it feels like a complete game. Keep in mind, this is not early access, it is actually a complete game. I know you wouldn't believe it due to the price point. The sound is clean and sharp, and the user interface is actually quite good. There's a lot of things you can click on, but it feels good and it is pretty easy to navigate. So in regards to good points, there is a lot of them. This is a strong game. But that doesn't mean it's all good. There are some bad things or some negative things about the game. The first one, the controls feel odd to start with. You don't use your normal keys to move around, use mouse clicks. But you do get used to that, and that becomes less of an issue as you progress through the game. The game really lacks what I'd call sufficient quality of life balance. You spend a lot of time making various things to make other things, which are then required to make other things to make other things. It can be really tiresome after a while. I'll talk more about that in a second. There is simply way too many things to unlock. It is almost overwhelming. When you get hurt or you drain the stamina, you have to eat food or drink juices to heal or regenerate yourself. And as you progress in the game to work your way further into the maps, you literally will chew through tons of food and drink, and it just doesn't feel balanced quite right. I found that as the game progressed, I spent less and less time exploring, but more and more time at base just crafting, building and cooking. And in fact, as I got closer to those 40 hours of gameplay, I would say that well over 90% of my time was just at the base, clicking, crafting, going through inventories, going through the UI over and over and over. And that's not necessarily what I wanted to do most in this game. The combat is okay to start with, but becomes pretty pedantic and routine, and to be honest, quite tiresome. Not being able to change the camera angle even slightly, I found really restrictive and annoying. I do not like that in a game. That is a real problem for me. The taming process, how you tame the wild animals and bring them back to your base, which is through throwing nets, seems a little bit hit and miss and feels somewhat silly. The creature AI, both of your enemies and the wild cows and chickens, is really simple to say the least. And at times, progression into a new map, exploring, was just really slow. As every few meters there are more creatures which run straight at you. They always hit you, and so you quickly suffer damage. This means you advance a few meters, you then fight the creatures, then you have to stop and eat and heal, which could take up to a minute of gameplay. Then you advance a few more meters, you find the next lots of creatures which are just right there, they charge at you, they hit you, they cause damage to you, you've got to stop, you've got to eat your food, you've got to heal. This happens over and over and over again as you progress through the maps, and that did my head in. And one of the things I just could not understand was the way you progress and you unlock things after 40 hours of gameplay. I really was only just beginning to have any necessity to build a shelter. If this is a survival genre, that throws in the face of everything about survival. Food and shelter are number one, and shelter just isn't even required until much later in the game. That was really strange. It took too long for you to unlock certain mechanics or items that made the quality of the life of your gameplay better. It took probably 30 hours of gameplay for you to start to unlock those items. So there is a massive chunk of the game where it feels really grindy. And that's not what you really want in a game. I would not be surprised if a lot of people get turned off the game after about 20 hours of gameplay. It's just a bit too grindy in the early stages. And I guess one of the classic things which you note about a grindy game is when 20 hours into a game or 30 hours into the game, you're almost always doing the same things that you were doing to get certain materials on hour 1, and that's not a great sign. So the early and early mid part of the game is actually pretty good, but it does get a little bit worse, and this is where that zone of reviewers sit on Steam. They sit in that early part of the game where it's quite interesting, but they're not quite tipping over into the grindy part of the game, which I had to go through. And I would also note that 40 hours into the game, I was only just beginning to unlock the magic of the game, the magical aspect of it. I had unlocked this sphere, this magical sphere that was following me around, but I still hadn't learnt to cast any spells, and I'd only fought one boss. That's okay, but the game sells itself as a magical type game, and 40 hours in, I was only just beginning to see that. To that point, I had no magic spells, nothing like that whatsoever. And yeah, that didn't sit quite right with me. As a game itself, Force of Nature 2 I would describe as okay. But for the price that you are paying, it is a really, really good buy, as you'll definitely get your money's worth. And if you're a bit more into this type of game than I am, you will love it, and you will definitely have many hours of entertainment out of it. I hope you have enjoyed this 40-hour game review. If you want to see more of these things, then don't forget to hit the sub button, like, subscribe, blah-de-blah-de-blah, all that usual garbage. I don't chuck lots of videos out all the time, just because it takes me a while to do these things, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next chapter.